Hello and welcome to Cryptid By Region, Wales. With today's video, I figured it probably made sense to stay within the United Kingdom, since we recently have visited Ireland and Scotland. I can't recall which of my viewers asked me to cover this location, but if you let me know in the comments, then I'll certainly give you credit for it. As a note, it probably is a safe bet that our next location will probably be England to round out our travels. So, let's do something a little different for our cryptid family road trip and travel by boat across the Irish Sea from our previous location of Scotland to the shores of Wales. Wales, which is natively known as Cymru, has a very long history, and as usual I'll do my best to provide the important parts, but all the while keeping within our time frame. People began inhabiting the area we know as Wales not long after the end of the Ice Age. This continued for a while until the Romans took notice of the land and invaded in 48 AD. They would remain in control of Wales until 1410 AD. The Germanic people known as Anglo-Saxons would then come in and stake a claim on the land. As an interesting point, the name Welsh and Wales were actually terms used by the Anglo-Saxons to reference Britons. In fact, those terms were frequently utilized for any lands Britons controlled, and not just for the location we are discussing in this video. Battles would take place between the two groups, and eventually Wales would be split up into many separate kingdoms. The people made many attempts to separate themselves from British control, but after many battles, King Edward I was able to wrestle control away from the ruling lords by 1282. This would then be followed by the Statute of Rhuddlan in 1284, which effectively considered Wales separate from England but under the same rule. By 1542, with the Laws in Wales Act, under the rule of King Henry VIII, all Celtic traditional Welsh rules were removed and replaced with English rules. Not much has changed from this period of time into our current one. Even today, the Welsh government firmly states that Wales is not a principality. Although we are joined with England by land, and we are a part of Great Britain, Wales is a country in its own right. However, England still holds the right to control how much power the country has. The flag of Wales, known as the Thlag Gwch, or Red Dragon, is very interesting in design, but the meanings are rather complex. The Red Welsh Dragon has had many reported origins, but most claim it represents a story about King Vortigern, where a red dragon was seen battling a white dragon. A prophecy emerged from this, stating that the white dragon, symbolizing the Saxons, would dominate the battle, but eventually the red one, symbolizing the Britons, would win and take back England. Although, this symbol would re-emerge in tales about the King of Gwynedd, known as Cadwaladr ap Cadwallon. Hence, the symbol is known as the Red Dragon of Cadwaladr. The green and white colors of the flag represented Henry VII's royal standard, which utilized the same pattern, and to an extent, a similar red dragon was present as well. I dug deep to see if I could ascertain what those colors meant, but I was unable to glean any information behind that. This flag wasn't officially recognized until 1959. Alright, let's see what cryptids this country has. Having its roots in Celtic lore, we do find the mix of mythical beasts, not referencing Rhett and Link, and flesh and blood creatures. So I have tried my best to separate the two. Starting off, I want to talk about a few creatures that don't fit into my normal categories. The first would be a sighting of what can only be described as a dragon. For years, people in the Glamorgan area have claimed that they were aware of a race of winged serpents that made their home in the forests. These creatures had feathery wings, crests on their head, and their scaly skin sparkled as if it were covered in jewels. They would coil up on the ground while resting, but wouldn't hesitate to kill by swooping down on anything or anybody that threatened them. According to the locals, they stated these creatures were known to take livestock frequently. While you may easily write these accounts off as legends, there was another sighting on March of 2001 in Powys. A British naturalist and a few colleagues were investigating the area after receiving reports from locals that they had been seeing something odd in the forest. They started to set up their equipment near the edge of a quarry, when all of them noticed something really strange flying about. It was described as being about 3 feet long, having a serpentine body, 4 short legs, its green skin shimmered as if it was covered in jewels, its head shape resembled a seahorse, and the long tail ended in what resembled a whale's fluke. The creature stayed about 10 feet off the ground, and it flew in an undulating pattern. The group watched this being for about 4 minutes before it finally vanished in one of the caves in the quarry. They all were left with the impression that this being was actually warning them to stay out of its territory. The naturalist chose to report this anonymously for fear of ridicule from his field, although he stated that whatever it was wasn't an optical illusion or model of any type. Interestingly, this report has brought with it many other sightings involving a similar being ranging in all sizes and colors, but all describing these serpents having wings. Some have even stated that they can be nocturnal or even appear to have a bioluminescent quality. All these versions sound very familiar to another being known as a lindworm. Keeping with the serpent theme, we need to look at the creature known as the Beast of Bodolog. This being was reportedly most active from September to December of 1988 near the town of Raider, which coincidentally is in Powys. This being was never actually seen, so no descriptions can be given, but during that stated time frame, farmers awoke to find many of their sheep dead. Apparently, this creature would attack at night, and its behavior was quite puzzling. According to the reports, it would attack the sheep and always focus its strike on the animal's sternum. This bite location is certainly odd, but what makes this weirder is the fact that it never ate anything that it killed. Every morning, the farmers would awake to find the carcasses of their sheep lying on the ground with puncture wounds in their chest, but none of the flesh being removed. During its attacks, it killed over 35 sheep. At first, it was thought that a large cat was responsible for the death, but the evidence pointed another direction. At one of the farms, a large path of flattened grass was found that led from the farm to the nearby River Wye. The realization was that the obvious culprit was a massive, aggressive snake of some sort. After this discovery, other paths were found circling the holding pens of many other farms. Now knowing what to look out for, the farmers kept an eye open for a massive snake, but oddly enough, the attacks ceased. As an interesting note, I found that snakes don't hibernate in the winter. They do what is called brumation. This is similar to hibernating, but they will leave from time to time to get water or find food, and then return to their burrow to go back to sleep. Why this is important is that they typically begin this process between September to December. That sounds very familiar. The final one in our oddity category is known as the Bodfari Goblins. I debated including this one, but the story is too interesting to not talk about it. The encounter comes from the first-hand account of a man named Reverend Dr. Edward Williams from when he was a child. The story takes place in a field known as Cakehild in Denbighshire. On a summer day, Edward and his sister and 2 children from the neighborhood were playing near the field around 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Suddenly, the group noticed some beings that were neither man, woman, or child dancing in the field 100 yards away with great briskness. There appeared to be 7 or 8 couples involved in this merriment, and even though they were in full view, they were moving so fast that the kids were unable to discern any facial features. These beings were said to be slightly shorter than a human child. They were wearing red clothing that almost resembled a uniform, and their heads were covered in a form of handkerchief. At this sight, the children quickly started to run away in fright towards a nearby stile. A stile is a ladder set up on a wall to allow humans to cross over it, but not animals. Anyway, the other children made it to the stile, but Edward was the youngest of them all and was obviously slower. As he looked back, he saw one of the creatures chasing after him with a grim expression on his face. Edward screamed out, and his sister quickly yanked him over the stile. The goblin stretched its body out to grab a hold of the boy, but was unable to do so. Oddly enough, the creature did not dare cross over the wall to get at the children. The kids ran home and told their parents of what they had seen. The adults went out to find the culprits, but couldn't find anything. Edward wrote about his encounter many years later and stated that through the years he had tried to come up with a rational explanation behind what he saw. Let's now move on to a category that can carry a classification, and that would be water beings. The first one on this list would be a creature known as the Barmouth Monster. This being has been seen swimming in the waters of the Menai Strait since the 1800s. Due to variances in description, there actually may be two different creatures in the area. One is described as being 10 feet long, having dark colored skin, a long neck and tail, a square head, flippers, and green eyes. The other version is said to be the same size, resemble a crocodile, and when it walks on land, it leaves footprints as large as an elephant. In 1805, a ship was suddenly attacked by the creature, and it actually wrapped itself around the mast of the craft. The crew struck at the being, and it fell back into the water, but it continued to follow them for 2 days before finally vanishing from sight. On September 3, 1882, a group of people were standing on the bank when they noticed a large black creature swimming on the water's surface in an undulating pattern. It was estimated to be traveling about 30 miles an hour, and it was longer than a steamer. Now we are getting into possibly another version. In 1937, a man encountered a large beast that resembled a crocodile walking along the bank. In the same time frame, a woman claimed to find 4 footprints in the sand that were the size of an elephant's. Finally, in March of 1975, 6 girls were walking along the water when they saw a creature they claimed was like a dinosaur. It had a long neck, square head, black patchy skin, and had a long tail and flippers. It apparently stared at the girls for a while before entering the water and submerging under the surface. I can't leave this topic without mentioning the locally famous creature known as Teggy, found in Bala Lake. Sightings of this creature have been around since the early 1920s, and descriptions vary from a typical plesiosaur, an eel, to a form of crocodile. What makes this version unique is that it apparently has been seen swimming in groups rather than just a singular creature. There is yet to be any good photographic proof of its existence, but farmers around the area claim that it is still swimming around the waters, but mostly at night. As usual, I couldn't include all the cryptids here, or more importantly, didn't have enough information to give them singular attention. So here they are in honorable mentions. It should come as no surprise that there are sightings of Bigfoot in Wales. There are many groups in the area that are actively collecting reports on sightings. Not to mention that there was a rash of activity reported to the police and alleged to be covered up between January 1st, 2010 and January 23rd, 2021. There have been a few dogman or werewolf sightings through the years, and they are frequently reported near the Carmarthenshire area. Wales has had many sightings of mermaids through the years. They have been reported from all over, but in 1603, a sailor named Thomas Reynold witnessed one near Pendine, Carmarthenshire. He motioned for others to look at the creature, and they apparently did so for 3 hours. They were all examined and found to be sane of mind. Then in July of 1826, 12 people saw a similar being near the cliffs of Aberystwyth. In this sighting, it appeared to be a pale-skinned female washing herself in the sea, and she had a black tail splashing behind her. The next creature is a real oddity, and it is known as and I couldn't find a pronunciation for it, but Genoprogwerian. This is a lizard that has been seen in Abersoch, North Wales. It is said to be between 16 and 26 inches long. It has an orange head, lives underground, and its eyes continually roll around in its sockets. Most have only seen it stick its head out of its burrow and try to catch flies with its long tongue. What makes this odd is that apparently it has been seen multiple times, but most thought its species had died out long ago. Typically, the next creature is known mostly in the tales of myth, but I felt driven to include it due to a longtime viewer named Isabet requesting it. This is known as an avank, and it was said to resemble a mix between a beaver, crocodile, and even a sea serpent. Sightings were reported in the 1500s in many lakes, and it even had tales involving it in stories with King Arthur. Today, many assume that it may have been a misidentified pike or even a large beaver, but who knows. Much like many areas in the UK, there are plenty sightings of alien big cats. In Wales, they have ones such as the panther-looking beast of Baglan and the Welsh wildcat. Finally, I would like to end on an interesting water horse that is said to be similar to the Kelpie, but is capable of flying and changing its form. This one is called the Keffidul. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video and that I did Wales justice. I apologize for any mispronunciations. The Welsh language is a little hard to find. Honestly, this area didn't have as many cryptids that we are normally accustomed to seeing as of late. Either that or the tails aren't making it out of the borders too easily. Although I do know that there are more encounters of the ghostly or UFO variety. So I look forward to revisiting this area when we start the video series on that. Anyway, please keep doing your fantastic job of voting for what state you would like to see us visit next in the Cryptid by State series. Normally, I would have a good idea of which one would be next by now, but we still have a strong tie between Louisiana and North Carolina. This battle is truly neck and neck each week. Every time one state gets a vote, the other one does as well. I'm really interested to see which one will prevail. I can say with confidence that you have been voting so much for these two states that without a doubt, whichever one loses, it will certainly be the following month's video. If you haven't yet done so, do please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. Also, it would be greatly appreciated if you share my videos with someone you know who may enjoy this type of genre. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.